All of my life, I've been told by my friends and family that I'm too deep. I therefore am conscious of that fact. And so I therefore keep my postings from getting too deep because it loses some people. But not this time. This video will go a little deeper because doing so is necessary. I do realize that what's being discussed within this video will go over the heads of many. I also know that whenever people have been lied to and brainwashed down many generational lines, that a speaker of truth will always sound like a raving lunatic. But nonetheless, I'm still going to plant these seeds of truth into your minds, because we must never underestimate the power of planting seeds of truth into fertile minds, especially given that I'm telling the truth to the group of people who built the pyramids, introduced science, medicine, writing, and philosophy to the world, and the group that are hiddenly responsible for most inventions that have revolutionized the world. I therefore know that my people have the capacity to grasp what I'm teaching. Many of our people don't know those great narratives that I just stated about our group. Most instead only knows of the negative lies that the white society keeps us believing about ourselves in order to maintain their social dominance and control over us. But because I know of our true great hidden narratives, I therefore know that I'm planting seeds of truth into great fertile minds. I will therefore always continue to do so. Those who know the truth must teach. African proverb. Now, starting with the topic of today's video. Countless times I've had black people say to me that I'm not acting like a real black man because I refuse to use the N-word. I refuse to allow a black man to call me by the N-word. I refuse to speak Ebonics. I never sag my pants. And I constantly present facts that are to the contrary of the commonly held belief among our people. But what those black people don't realize, that it's not me that's not behaving like an authentic black person, but it's instead themselves. Those noted behaviors that they're currently associating with being a black person are actually the deliberate result of negative social engineering of the African American culture by white oppressive forces. This is not some feeble-minded attempt at scapegoating to absolve ourselves of our own responsibilities and bad behaviors by wrongly blaming white people, as so many have been brainwashed to respond. It's the absolute truth. Negative social engineering is a true and well-proven hidden social science. People's behaviors aligns with the narratives that they've accepted as being the true about themselves. And people often imitate those derogatory media depictions of their group that they've accepted as being their reality. Therefore, those who write of people's narratives and controls of people's media images are able to literally steer their culture as if they were their puppets. Because the white establishment exclusively writes all of our societal narratives and exclusively controls our mainstream media images, they therefore literally exclusively owns our interpretation of ourselves. White oppressive forces have exploited this immense position of power over us by falsely negatively distorting our narratives and our media images. In doing so, they've conditioned millions of us to perceive ourselves through a false inherent subordinate identity that aids them in maintaining their social dominance over us. Here's an absolute fact that millions of us have been psychologically blinded from seeing. The white society controls how black people are depicted. It's a fact. And the oppressor's depiction of the oppressed is never a true one. It's always falsely negatively distorted to serve the oppressor's nefarious hidden agendas. This fact has remained consistent throughout human history. It's true in regards to how the oppressed are depicted before others, as well as how we are being depicted to ourselves. Those black people that uses the N-word, sags their pants, speaks Ebonics, and glorifies pimps are not perceiving themselves based upon their true, authentic identities. They're instead perceiving themselves through the white society's derogatory depiction of black people, through the narratives they write about us and their media depictions of us. They're actually acting like the false caricatures of our racial group created by white propagandists that they've accepted as being their true reality. This is all possible because people are more programmable than most of us would like to admit. And we African Americans are more susceptible to being socially engineered, given that we were totally stripped of our true identity and culture during the enslavement of our ancestors. Millions of African Americans are functioning based upon a false identity imposed upon us by white oppressive forces within the matrix. You know, most people are clueless of what the real matrix actually is. The real matrix is not a computer simulation. It's not a movie, nor does it have anything to do with a red pill. The real matrix is a false version of reality that has been pulled over our eyes to prevent us from seeing the true reality. The world is being inaccurately perceived through the distorted lens of the white society. It's an enormous, illusory truth effect that has been grafted upon us and indoctrinated into our collective minds since birth through the white society's monopoly over information and media images. An illusory truth effect is when people have been made to believe that false information is true because of being constantly subjected to the false information and images. And then their thoughts and behaviors aligns with the false information and distorted images, thus inaccurately perceiving reality. To fully understand what the matrix actually is, you have to learn social science. Social science is one of the branches of science devoted to the study of human behavior, specifically how people interact with each other, behave, and develop as a culture. That science has been thoroughly studied by our oppressors, gaining them much knowledge over the subject. They've exploited that gained knowledge to mentally enslave millions of black people. And those of us who do not critically think never notices our mental chains. Because they've socially engineered us to put more emphasis in being holy rather than being critical thinkers, we are therefore easy victims of those who have studied how the mind works and how to hijack the group minds of targeted populations. While black people studied our Bibles, believing that it contained the true words of God that would protect us, white oppressive force studied instead social sciences, the science of the group mind, the herd mentality. And they then used that gained knowledge to create an elaborate prison for the minds of black people. And the prison for the mind is the most difficult prison to escape. Case, point, and proof. Millions of us clings to our Bibles, insisting that it will protect us, even though millions of us have in fact been killed by our evil white oppressors while clinging to our Bibles. This profound contradiction from reality is not being mentally processed by millions of black people because they are mentally enslaved. Mental slavery is the worst form of slavery because it makes you love and defend your oppressors while making enemies of your own people who are trying to free your mind. The only way to escape this mental prison is by studying the social sciences that has been used to create it. Once we've gained that knowledge, thus understanding how it works, we can then develop the proper counter strategies that are necessary in order to overcome it. The fact is that our entire perception of reality is an elaborate white deception. This is possible because the public perception of reality is not shaped based upon facts nor reality. Public perceptions are actually shaped by the narratives that are repeatedly fed into our society. Therefore, the basic tools required for the distortion of reality is to merely constantly feed distorted narratives into a society. The public at large will then begin functioning based upon those false, distorted narratives rather than the true reality. I realize that to many of you that sounds like BS, okay? Therefore, I will prove to you that perceptions of reality can be distorted by the narratives that are fed into a society. I'm going to use self-evident facts, things that we all can agree on, we know about. I will prove it by demonstrating the difference between how Caucasians are commonly perceived within our society and their reality. Throughout history, the Caucasians have demonstrated an entrenched predisposition for racism that is matched only by their proclivity for deceit, greed, and hunger for power. They alone are the most arrogant and the most narcissistic and the race most predisposed to racism. All other races have been their enemies or their victims. Throughout history, the oppressors have demonstrated an almost total disregard for the human lives of non-whites. Their subjugation, murder, and exploitation of all other races are unparalleled. There has never been a time in history which Caucasians have not either exploited millions of people and have contributed either directly or indirectly to the misery, suffering, and deaths of millions. While labeling all other races as being savages, the oppressors have in fact been the most brutally savage throughout history. It's the reality that we're forbidden through censorships and sanctions from openly speaking about. Now, yet in spite of these facts, Caucasians are most often favorably perceived as being a racial group possessing the highest ethical and moral standard. It's exactly as director Michael Moore said. He said that white people have committed some of the worst crimes in history, but somehow they've convinced the world that black people are a threat. This profound contradiction against reality exists because, as I've already stated, beliefs held within a society are not shaped based on facts nor reality. They're actually shaped by the narratives and media images that are repetitively fed into a society. Because the white society controls all of the narratives and mainstream media images that are being fed into our society, they constantly feed white exalting narratives. Because by systematically feeding white exalting narratives and media images, they've given their racial group an elaborate makeover. Through those movies constantly depicting themselves as heroes and saviors, the white society has literally given their racial group a favorable image makeover. You know, all you have to do is repeatedly feed propaganda to the public, and you can steer the minds of the masses towards an applied objective. Through this practice, the white society has literally whitewashed the perception of reality. It's the world's most elaborately deployed perception management system. Perception management is a propaganda technique that involves altering the public perception of reality to suit the objective of the ruling class. It's an essential part of modern information warfare. This disclosed perception management system that is designed for maintaining false assumptions within a society that aids in maintaining white social dominance over the masses. Until you put down your mental enslaving Bibles and start instead learning of the many hidden social sciences that are being deployed for maintaining white social dominance and to facilitate their long-term oppression of black people, until then you will remain mentally enslaved and confused. I never said that what I teach will be easy for all to comprehend. I only say that it will be the black liberating truth, the truth that will free our minds, the truth that the white oppressors don't want you ever learning. It is time to learn this truth. Learn social science. There are social science for controlling the mind. And the general population doesn't know what's happening, and it doesn't even know it doesn't know. The white society feels propaganda into our society to exalt their group. They say this instills a value system into the minds of the masses that makes us more comply with their dominance over our lives. And to maintain their dominance over us, they feed us negative. Because they control our narratives, they feed us negative narratives about ourselves that condition us to perceive ourselves through a false and inherent subordinate identity that aids in maintaining their dominance over us. Our perceptions are scripted scripted by the narrative that fed into our society. You have to learn social science if you're serious about liberating yourself. Everything's an illusion. White supremacy is an illusion. White superiority is an illusion. One love and peace.